Hi everybody, and welcome back to this second episode of Mindful Pulses. I really appreciate you subscribing, sharing, liking. Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about standards and what does it mean to appreciate and establish standards. I'm broadcasting this morning from a very, really iconic location here in Cardiff, where you have this temple that was established many, many years ago. I'll talk to you more about this later, but this is one of a kind location. You have a lot of surfers here, and really quite a mesmerizing views, even though, as they say here, it's June gloom after May gray. But usually the sun tends to come out around noon. Today we're going to be talking about standards and my take on, what is going on in the world today and how we tend to have a really biased view of how to apply and how to appreciate standards that have been established on many levels. I was reading some news from Africa. I think it was in Congo, where you had a boat accident where some 80 people unfortunately lost their lives. I mean, something that would be quite unlikely in the Western world when you think about it, right? And yet that is the daily living and the daily situation of countless of people in third world countries, such as in Africa, where just being able to have access to water and food is a daily battle. These houses are worth, probably $4, $5, $6, $7 million. But then, every day, every night, around 5, 6, 7, you have the most beautiful sunset. Is it worth it? Do you guys? What do you think? On a $5 million house, you're looking at $180,000 worth of property tax, so almost, $15,000 a month. Could you afford that? So going back to my story about standards, I think generally speaking, it starts at home. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday, as I was talking to my son, I realized that his hands and his nails were very, very dirty and very long. And I made kind of a big deal out of that, saying, hey, you're almost 12 years old. You need to groom yourself. You need to cut your nails. And that was sort of establishing standards for being clean. And I think it's really important. It starts at home. And it is a good way for children to very, very early on understand that you really set yourself up for success, and you have to constantly challenge yourself and demand of yourself to go above and beyond, not just for the sake of, trying to be better than other people, not at all, but just realizing that setting higher standards is probably the most important decision that you could take as a human being, because along the way it will allow you to make decisions and meet people that will just, I think, enrich your life dramatically. And I'm not talking about money necessarily. I'm just talking about general fulfillment of you as a human being. I sometimes listen to Jordan Peterson, that analyst researcher from Canada, who made a great deal of sense when he was saying, at the end of the day, when you sit down on your bed before going to sleep at night and you kind of reflect on your day or on your life, there is always that voice that tells you what you should be doing and not doing, if you're being honest with yourself. And I think that is so true, right? That is so true, to embrace those moments and recognize that there are things that you could improve on. And again, establishing those standards, whether it's obviously academically, what you could learn, what you could do, the life that you want to lead, and just being able to take the steps incrementally and realizing that it will take time, but over time you will get there. Incredibly important, right? Raising the standards, the vision for where you want to go, and then taking those incremental steps. And the hack or the trick to get there is not to focus on the end point and the end of the story, if you will, but it's really looking at the next goal that is right in front of you and then focusing on the next one. Going back to my story about Africa, today Burkina Faso suspended some key news outlets, I think Voice of America and the BBC. And again, it goes back to my point earlier about standards and, standards of freedom and just the ability to communicate and frankly to criticize, for example, your own government is something that we take for granted, and that is obviously not necessarily true or something that can be done, in other countries. And I think that, again, we don't necessarily have that perspective as we are kind of used to have this type of free discourse here in America. But I guess the key is to recognize that by standards we mean a set of measurable guidelines or levels that we fix for the rest of our lives, right? And that's what this is about. It's about, stretching for a better life ultimately, right? And it's not a given. I think a lot of people fall into a trap of sort of bubbling around, and that's something that I've seen and that even impacted my own life, right? You sort of bubble around and you let life go by without really taking control of, what you could become. That's where standards again come very handy. Speaking of traps, check this out. I don't know if you can see the cop over there. He set a trap. That's a speed trap, hoping to catch a couple of speeding cars. Oh man, California is also desperate to get some money, right? I don't know if those traps, hidden traps, are okay. I don't know what you guys think. So standards, do I want to live in a multi-million-dollar house, in a, exclusive neighborhood? What does that mean, right? How do I get there? Or is my standard really around just, living the life, going surfing every day, maybe raising good kids and just, spending most of my time chilling and enjoying life day by day? Different standards, ones are not necessarily better than others. It's just a different appreciation, right? Now, the other benefit that I see when setting standards is the fact that when things go badly, go wrong, you can always sort of fall back to a position where you're still going to be okay because you've established sort of a routine. And I'll give you an example. Until later in my life, I started to really make my bed every day. And I think that little simple task of just putting together, you know, my pillows in the morning and just adjusting the bed, mentally I think sets you off to a great day, right? Because it sets off a routine that that allows you to go about your day in a more organized way, obviously. I read the book The Power of Habits, I think it's called, where you're able to, every time you're able to anchor a moment of reward, you're very likely to embrace that new habit. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks. In my case, you know, going to the gym, usually I lift weights for about 20 minutes, and then I would go run for 10-15 minutes, interval running, and then the reward is the 15-20 minutes in the sauna. So by knowing that at the end of the session I'll be able to get to my sauna, knowing that I can really decompress and enjoy the heat, drives me through the motions, right? You know, weights, running, and then heading to the sauna. So I'm setting myself that standard of trying to maintain that at least 3 to 4 times a week. In my case, I've also recognized that it's important to take a break and let your body recover, because, you know, once you're 50, you get injured. In my case, actually, I got injured on my elbow, my left elbow. But there's definitely something to be said about being able to establish those guidelines, those standards for yourselves, and then being able to maintain them throughout, imagine throughout weeks, months, and then imagine throughout years, right? There is definitely an incremental benefit to doing that. Whew, boy, it's getting hot here, even if the sky is still sort of gray, but the sun is peaking now. Another point that I want to make is that, you know, standards are not goals. Standards is really, in my view, more sort of the destination. To get there, you know, you have to obviously set up a bunch of goals. You may never reach those quote-unquote standards, right? But at least you have an aspiration to get there. And that's what this is all about. So, you know, for my kids, if they ever watch those videos, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, you know, it's something that you need to pass on to your family. That need to challenge and to establish those standards, to elevate what your life can become, right? Another quick example, I watch a lot of those YouTube video channels, and I mean, some of them are pretty good. I think a lot of the hosts that have those videos sometimes are rambling over and over the same thing, which is kind of funny in a way, but they are basically doing the same video over and over again, which my challenge is to actually try to do something different every day, which is hard, right? But I was telling myself, you know, if John Doe can have 300,000-400,000 subscribers, you know, and they don't really necessarily have a lot to say, I can probably achieve a similar result, you know, as long as I've got interesting insights on life and what's going on. So I don't know, what do you think? Maybe it's not humble enough, but at least that's my way of thinking about attempting to establish some standards around what I'd like to do next and how I want to spend an hour or two a day, because there is of course the work of putting the video after together, which is kind of fun. I love editing. Anyway, back to the story about Africa. So Africa is becoming actually strategically quite important, and for years already, probably more than 15 years, China has taken over large parts of Africa. As we speak, there is, I think, a a Korean Africa summit happening in the next few days, and there is a tremendous amount of interest from some Asian countries to establish some very tight partnerships with those countries for good reasons, right? A lot of wealth in the ground, and you can certainly see that there is a sort of a realignment of those powers. That will be the subject of other videos for sure. The realignment of what's going on. I don't believe that the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are going to dislodge anytime soon the superpower status of the United States and the US currency, the US supremacy. Having said that, it is certainly a possibility at some point, and